circle. So you're up.
All right. So good afternoon, Gifty, and everybody else out there that I cannot see. And of course, good afternoon to Aramide, who is also speaking alongside myself at this event. All right. Thank you very much for having me. I find the conversation and the topic quite interesting. And I'll tell you in a little while why I find it pretty interesting, right? And it's because at some point in my life, you know, I didn't exactly consider myself to be someone who is extremely friendly, who also sort of has an extensive and interesting network of friends, right? So it's almost it's a very interesting scenario, right? That I've come full circle and been able to speak to people about friendship today, right? So the first thing is, let me just sort of, I'll tell you a couple of stories about myself as we go along, and I'll also sort of just reflect on a few things and share some thoughts, you know, as we go along. So the first thing is I want to. Oh, okay. So Debola is asking me to hold on. That we're not live yet. All right. So I will hold on. Okay. So guys, let me know when you want me to. When you want me to.
Okay.
Stop. All right, so it will appear that we're live now, right? Gifty, you're muted. Do you want to start again? How do you want us to proceed?
Okay, are we live now?
Yeah, I got a message from Debola that says we're live.
Okay, all right, great. So can start now. Just a second, please. Just a minute, please. Thank you. Okay. Great. All right. Good evening, everyone. You're welcome to this evening's edition of Squad Goals. Before we continue, I'll just do a brief introduction of the Bridge. So this is the Bridge. It's the singles ministry of the Elevation Church. We pride ourselves as a bucket of people living for God and making greatness common. This means that we are Christ-centered, we are community impactors, and we are change agents. Before we go into today's event, I will backtrack a bit and talk about what has led us to this point. So over the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about building friendships and how to make relationships work. And we've studied a couple of devotionals in the past few weeks about friendships, building relationships, making relationships work, and basically connecting with other people. And today we are wrapping it up with squad goals. Basically, this is about how to build your inner circle. And today we'll be having two beautiful speakers, amazing speakers actually. And first is Pastor Tunji Iola, popularly known as Pastor TJ. He's the resident pastor of the Lekki expression of the Elevation Church. He also doubles as the COO of the Elevation Church. For someone who actually has a very impressive bio, he likes to keep things simple when it comes to his introduction. So without further ado, I'll allow Pastor TJ to take over. Pastor TJ, over to you. Welcome. Pastor TJ, I think you're on mute. Please unmute yourself.
Oh, right. I apologize.
Thank you.
I forgot about that. All right. So good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good everything, everyone, irrespective. I mean, depending on where you are, right? So thank you very much for having me, guys. And it's very interesting what we're speaking about this afternoon, right? I'm going to try and sort of speak around it in multiple ways. I'm going to ask you guys questions. I'm also going to sort of share some of my personal stories, okay? And I find it quite interesting that today I'm talking about friendship and how you perhaps could do something about making friends, right? And sort of just enhancing the quality of your connection, right? You know, when you talk about it from the point of view of making friends and things like that, it almost sounds very simplistic, right? But what we need to understand is that human connections, networks, collaborations, and the people that we have connected to, they make a significant contribution to our lives, right? So if my life has turned out great today, or if your life is turning out great, all right, you cannot eliminate, you know, the contribution of the people that you're surrounded with, right? If things are also not going so great, right, you also cannot completely eliminate, right, the influence, the contribution of either the people that you have in your life or the mere fact that you don't necessarily have the right kinds of people in your life. All right. So I think that's something very important, you know, for everybody to note and to pay attention to, you know, as we go along. Now, you see, the interesting thing is this. Let me tell you. Let me start out by asking you a couple of questions, right? So I know that I'm not going to see your answers, but let me just ask you these questions. If, for example, all of a sudden tomorrow, right, you became broke and you happen to need money, how many people can you speak to? How many people will you speak to before you're able to raise, let's say, 500K? All right. I want you to think about it yourself, right? How many people are you able to speak to, right? Before you're able to maybe raise 500K? If you were out of a job tomorrow, right? How many people would you speak to before you can be connected to a job opportunity? If you suddenly became homeless, right, and you needed somewhere to stay, how many people do you have in your life who are not, forget family members, don't think about family members just yet. How many people do you have, all right, who are able to put you up or help you to get an accommodation? And of course, if you were to win the jackpot tomorrow, let's say, I don't know, $100,000, $1 million, whatever amount of money it is, right? If you were to get a windfall of money tomorrow, who are the people that are going to share with? How many people would you call? Who are the people that you would call first, right? So if your grandfather were to die tomorrow, you got a call from his lawyer, all right, saying you have so much money that's been allotted to you, who are the people that you're going to call? Now, I ask those questions, all right, because friendship, people that we have in our lives, right, they are the people that we do life with. They are the ones who make our lives meaningful or miserable, one way or the other. Now, let me tell you a personal story. I used to, many years ago, I used to be very, very reserved, and I still am. At the core, right, I am highly introverted, very shy. I struggle to make friends with people. In fact, to be honest, no, I don't necessarily, I no longer struggle to really make friends with people. But in certain contexts, right, I connect more with a crowd than with individuals, okay? So I'm able to just stand up in front of people, speak to them, and move on, than to speak to people one-on-one in a social setting, right? So I remember about 1990, what was this? About 21 years ago, so 1997, I think, I was part of a student fellowship in school. And that year, they were choosing leaders. I mean, we're choosing leaders, and I was appointed to a leadership role that meant that I was going to have to be the most vocal person, right, in the fellowship. I was going to be the person that spoke every time, you know. I became the number 3 most senior person at the fellowship. And I remember one of the things that crossed my mind, the very first thing that crossed my mind when they announced my name was that these guys were going to have an incredibly boring year, because part of my responsibility was to anchor the meetings, speak once in a while, and do all sort of things, right? And the reason was because I considered myself incredibly shy. I struggled to connect with people. And then what did I do? What happened? You know, so somewhere along the line, I said to myself that I was going to try and sort of just learn about this thing called human interaction, learn about this thing called human connection. And that was exactly what I did. So I turned to what I knew to do best when in that sort of situation. I started reading. So I read about 2 or 3 books, you know, and interestingly enough, there are books that are, if you were to go on Amazon today, you find loads of books written about friendships. So I got about 2 or 3 books, you know. I remember one of them was Speak Your Mind. This book had chapters, you know, on what to do when you're meeting someone for the first time, how to speak to them. If we were meeting someone in a meeting, if we were meeting someone on a bus, it was that granular, that detailed. You know, I felt as if someone had looked at my life and decided to put together a manual to help me to overcome what I considered at that time my most significant challenge. Suffice to say, not without boring you, by the time 1 year turned around, right, in that role, I had friends who would not like to walk with me for 200 meters. And you know why? Because if we're going to walk for 200 meters, there was a very high probability that I would stop at least 10 times to greet people, to talk with people along the road. I'd stop with people along the road, all right? So that says something about the capacity that we all have, you know, to be able to connect with people. And so the first thing I'd really like to point out this afternoon, all right, is that, you know, building your network or your squad goals, right? Your inner structure of people is about value. And so the first thing you want to understand and say to yourself is, how valuable am I? And what kind of values am I looking for? All right? Because it's very clear, the more valuable you have, the more value I am bringing to the table in multiple contexts, right? The more I am able to attract equally valuable people to myself. And I attract them either by going after them, all right, or by them just sort of being attracted to me, because value speaks to value. Value is attracted to value, all right? So if I happen to be, and when I say value, I'm not necessarily talking about how much money you have. I'm talking about things like, how reliable am I? How empathetic am I, right? When people connect with me, when they see me, right, what do they think? Do they think that being connected to me is an advantage? So if someone thinks that I am someone who brings an advantage to them, it is very clear that they are very likely would want to value. It's another thing to be able to demonstrate that I have value. And that is why there are loads of people today, you know, who, until you get very close to them, right, you really can't tell, you know, that they are valuable, because they don't know how to sort of sell themselves. Say, you know, they I don't know whether you've heard this before. There are lots of people who say, look, I'm just going to get promoted because my work, my job, or my value is going to speak for me. That is a big fallacy, when it comes to networking, being valuable and demonstrating to people. So like I said, the first thing is, how valuable am I? The more I realize that I'm valuable, the more confident I become, in myself, right? Because self-esteem is at the heart, right, of friendliness, all right? Is at the heart of connecting with people, and is also at the heart of being able to attract people to yourself. So your self-esteem is very crucial in this game. And of course, you also then say to yourself, what value are you looking for in friends? I mean, when I asked the question about if we were to become broke, if we needed a house and all of that, that spoke to different aspects and elements and areas of our lives. If someone were to ditch you tomorrow, who would you call to go and cry on their shoulders or to help you out, right? If something happened at work, who would you speak to? Okay, so the second thing in all of this context and this conversation is to treat yourself, all right, your own self and your life as an organization, as a company. Think about yourself as a company that needs to have a board of directors. Your board of directors, would speak to the people that are in your inner circle of friends, right? Most organizations, right, that succeed find people of varying skills and values and put them on their board, all right, depending on the nature of the industry that they are in. And so those people are able to bring a reasonable measure of value into guiding the affairs of the organization. So I say to you, let me sort of explain that in the context of what we're talking about. So the thing is this, I have friends that I play with. Most of some of those people are just useful and valuable for entertainment, hanging out. There is that one side of my life. I have friends, that when I want to speak about serious issues, career, business, whatever it is, I go to them. Okay, so they are in my inner circle and on the board, my friendship board, right? I have friends, that when it is a relationship issue, right, that I want to speak to, I go to them and I have friends when it is money, function of, look, I feeling like I've become an NFA, no future ambition. I can't seem to see the vision of my life anymore. All I need to do is speak to them for a while, and then I be tired up again. So you want to ask yourself, but some of the things that you put in the brief that you had sent to me is talking about friendship audits, is to be able to say, look, of all of the people that I'm connected with in my life, what value are they bringing? And if I don't have these people who have different kinds of values, how can I get into the groove of attracting them, of connecting with them, and of course, being able to build a relationship with them that takes away, that can take further and help me, to continuously share the value of having great people in my corner. Okay, so I've said two things now. Number one, I've talked about the value. You must be valuable. You need to find so that you can attract valuable people. The second thing is I've said you need to think about your life, as an organization, and say who are on your friend, the people on your friendship board, all right? Now, I'm not trying. Now, the other thing that I wanted to understand is this, right? If you think about the example I gave at the beginning, talking about my own story, right? The thing is this, to be able to connect with people in some context, right? It requires some tiny little measure of being skillful. There is a skillfulness that comes with building great, all right? So simple things like carrying on a conversation with people. Simple things like knowing how to encourage people, how to identify someone and go after them. I'll give you a couple of examples, right? I think it was 2 days ago or so, I saw on Twitter, right? Two people who were in first date with a young man, and the guy had asked her, where do you see yourself in 5 years or something like that, right? To be honest, I am struggling to even think that thing happened there, but it would appear that it happened live. And so she went on Twitter and said, look, why would you go on the first date with someone and then what do you want to do? What's your 5-year plan or your 5-year goal for yourself? and she sort of dissed the guy. Then the guy responded and also said, look, why will I don't have time to faff around, you know, I only want people in my life who are valuable. So if I think I'm dating you and you don't have good relation, I mean, you don't have a vision for your life, you know, why would I want to be with you? Now, for me, the issue with those two people in that scenario is an issue of skill set. Because when you're navigating connections and relationships, right, the things that you do in the early stages, the things that you do as a friendship progresses, the things that you do, you know, as life goes on, that help you to strengthen the relationship so that you don't overload it and you don't also underutilize the value of it. Okay, so that's one thing on one side, right? I mean, personally, I'm not sure that conversation was a first date kind of conversation. Again, we're talking about different strokes for different folks, right? So I'm talking about the skillfulness of making friends, right? I have a friend, this guy, once in a while, will just randomly send his friends SMSs and emails and say, look, I value your friendship. You're very useful to me, yada, 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 and make you feel good. That is a friendship skill set, right? I remember about 12 years ago, I think, right? My family and my family, we got robbed in the house that we lived at that time, right? We got robbed 2 times in about a month and about 2 months, right? So the second it happened, we really just felt very upset and frustrated, and we wanted to leave the environment for about a week. And we one of our friends, we're thinking of maybe go to an hotel or something and spend the week there. But we were so when we spoke to about 2 of our friends, one close friend, right, said, guys, come and stay with us for 1 week. So we moved into their house, all 5 of us. So myself, my wife, 2 kids, and my wife's younger sister moved into their house. There are also 5 in their house. They have a fairly big house, you know. It could accommodate and contain all of us, you know. And I sat back and I said to myself, what made it possible for this kind of people to be able to say, come and stay with us for a week? Again, it is about value. How much value you place on friendship. So these guys, as of that time, we have been friends for maybe about 12 years. We have been friends about 9 years. We have been friends from NYSC days. That was where we met. Can I ask you one question here? You know, who is listening to me? Do you have friends? Do you still have people in your life that you went to primary school with? Do you still have people in your life, you know, that you went to secondary school with, people that you went to university, college, polytechnic, whatever institution is with, right? Do you still have people like that? Of your life, you would meet new people. All right, is this the guy and the lady? Guess where they met? Do you know where they met? They met on Twitter. I think they met on Twitter maybe about 18 months ago, about 2 years ago, you know, and today they're married. So my point is, as you think about the skill set, all right, you also understand the environment, all right, of our lives in these days. There are places where there are different ways and different means of connecting with people. You see people online. You meet people at events. You know, we've been locked down for the last 6 months. You know, our human interaction and connection have reduced, right? But while we have been physically distant from people, have you been, you and I, have we been emotionally distant or connected with other people? Because that is what is very important. Gifty, would you please let me know when my time is up so I don't overrun? All right, so it's very important, you know, that we think about all of these concepts, right? And be able to say to ourselves, the place that we are in today, you know, the phase of life that we are in, the tools that are available to us, the platforms and the places where we meet people, right? How can I play in this place such that I am enriching my life and I am enriching, you know, the pool of people around my life? Okay, so you meet someone online. How do you take that forward? You begin to gist, you begin to chat, you begin to talk to yourselves, you find out that you have mutual interests and stuff like that. And I'm not even just talking about romantic relationships, any kind of relationship at all. Okay, and so you say to yourself, I am adventurous enough, okay, to be able to step out of my comfort zone and be able to connect to people. And a few things that sort of attract people to you or attract you to people. So number one is when you have mutual values, mutual interest, mutual attraction. And one thing that I found very helpful in my journey of going from a chronic introvert. Let me tell you how introverted I was when I was growing up, right? I'll tell you how introverted I was. I was so, I can still remember, I think I was in primary school, right? One of my friends came to the house to pay us a visit, to pay me a visit. You know what I did? I went to the bookshelf in our house. I pulled out 2 storybooks, 2 novels. I think I was in primary 6 or primary 5. I gave this guy one, and I had one for myself. And so that was that was how we spent our afternoon together. Read the book, I read one. You read one, I read one. You understand? So I every time I think about that story, I feel so embarrassed, right? But I then sort of moved from that guy, right? Who sort of struggled with that. I mean, with connecting with people. I remember another day I was in primary school, right? And I think it was during lunch. I just sat down in front of the class, right? And I started crying. Do you know why I was crying? I felt like nobody liked me. I felt like I was so unpopular. I felt like nobody wanted to talk to me. You know, and then my friends came and said, what is wrong with you? And you know, the funny thing is at that point in my life, I had quite a number of things, right, that made me a valuable person to other people. You know, I was one of the best students in my class. My parents were fairly popular in that environment. We were not rich, but my parents were just sort of, they were popular in church, popular in the course of work that they did and all that. So I ordinarily, I shouldn't lack connection. But because I didn't see the value in myself, I didn't understand how to stay connected with people, all right? Even people who then wanted to connect with me didn't understand me. They found me a little bit moody, okay? And so they would just sort of come and go. And so that brings me to my final point. You know, I have just about 3 points more. And that is understanding, in all of these things, understanding the power of you. Understanding the power of you. You see, the thing is this: number one, everybody has value. You and I will have value. Number 2 is that this game action of connections and friendship and all that is also built around personality types. Okay, so there is a way that you are wired, there is a way that I am wired, and we need to understand how that plays out in the journey of connecting with other people. There are people who are very great, you know, at walking into a room and leaving that room, all right, with 25 phone numbers of people they just met. There are other people who walk into a room and all they want to do is just hide in a corner because the mere sight of more than 15 people gathered together is a burden to them. Okay, but the truth is, and I was, and I still partly am, that second kind of person. But you see, the truth is that there is a way that you learn that I understanding myself, okay, and I'm able to then use that, you know, as a platform to connect with other people. So in the season that we're in right now, where we are all sort of, thank God we're beginning to come out of the lockdown, I mean, depending on where you are in the world, all right? But we then understand that there are tools for friendship that we need to leverage beyond just physical meetings, physical gatherings, to other things, okay? To creating other opportunities to hang out with people, to connect with them in different invaluable ways. And also then seeing long-term value in the relationships that we are building, all right? I read final thing. So remember the story I started with when I said I read books, right? So I read one book called The Fine Art of Friendship. And one of the things that attracted me to, and if I still check that book out on Amazon today, they still sell it, it's almost out of print. One of the things that attracted me to that book was that the guy, the author, the person who wrote the foreword and introduction to the book said he attended a party that the author threw, and maybe he was 50 years old. And in that party, he met people that the author had known for 50 years, people he had known for 40 years, people he had known for 30 years, people he had known for 20 years, for 10 years. And I asked myself, what is it that made this guy to be able to keep relationships, all right, from this period up until now? And that is the whole concept of the fine art of friendship and the things that I have spoken about already, okay? So if you're like me and you're potentially extremely introverted, there is hope for you. If you are the person out there who is the social butterfly, great, there is hope for you. But also understand that the depth of relationships matter. The value that the people bring around to you matters. There is no use having 1,000 people or 3,500 people on your contact list and you cannot speak to 10 of them that you can speak to when there are issues. Okay, and so I am encouraging everybody out there, this evening listening to me, to do a couple of things. Learn to think beyond yourself. Put yourself out there once in a while, all right? Acquire the skill set and the toolbox, all right, of making new relationships, right? So the toolbox, will be, again, like I said before, your values, your ability to be able to initiate conversations, your ability to look out for people, giving, all right? Sometimes is a great stop. Kind of conversation. Those things are immeasurably impactful in building great friendship. I'm just going to wrap up now and just end here, okay? So that we can carry on and listen to other people. And then I'm hoping that when we get to the question and answer part, I'll be able to sort of shed more light onto this. I'm trusting that someone has learned something, in the last, what I've said in the last 18 to 19 minutes. All right. So thank you very much. Gifty, I'm yielding the floor back to you.
Thank you so much, Pastor TJ. That was wonderful. To do a recap of what you've said so far, basically, the value that we bring to the table is important. The depth of the relationship is important. There's a necessary skill set that you need to be able to build friendships, and people should be open to putting themselves out there, every now and then, and people should also be open to giving. Fantastic. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure that every other person who is joining us on this call has learned a lot as well. Okay, so up next, our next speaker, though she is widely known as founder, Niger Startups, Aramide is also a consultant, digital skills trainer, and gender advocate. Aramide has a staggering resume, but to mention a few, she is a recipient of the Investing in Women UK Wonder Woman Award for the Woman in Tech category in 2019. She also won the Social Media for Good Award in 2019 and is also an honorary award recipient for business development by the Global Leadership Institute in Nigeria. Please welcome Aramide Abe. Welcome, Aramide.
Thank you, Gifty. Sorry, every time I join a webinar, I have to say, can you hear me? I'm sorry, I have to. No, we passed that, but with Nigerian internet, that is very blessed. You always have to ask.
No, you have to ask.
I hope everyone can hear me. I had to have backup just in case, for today. But thank you. It's really an honor and a privilege to be here. I just want to say thanks to everyone at the bridge, at Elevation. I'm glad to be speaking alongside Pastor Tunji, who I've known for a while, even before he started pastoring at Elevation. So thank you again. Okay, so obviously I've listened and I've learned a lot. I feel like a lot of the things Pastor Tunji said I was going to talk about, but I guess I would dive straight in. And I like that he spoke from the angle of, building friendships, the necessary steps, and the, some of the advice and guidelines and even lessons learned from his own life that one can apply. So the angle I'm going to use in terms of building relationships is all about you. So your own identity. And I like to always use experiential examples. So for me, I've come a bit of a way. I won't say a long way, but I've come a bit of a way with my journey with relationships. I've had some interesting relationships when it comes to friends in general, and I've had some really amazing ones. But one thing I've seen that has been consistent is that the more I began to know myself and discover who I am, or who I am, the more intentional I was about my relationships. And I think that's for everyone. It's important to know who you are, what your values are, what you stand for, your identity. And I have to say, it's not an easy thing, because I was on that journey as well, of that self-discovery journey. What's my purpose? But when I began to really understand who I was, who I am, who God has called me to, what He has called me to do, it became clear as to the kind of people that I would spend more time with. In the past, I would say I've had friends where, and I think I even referenced it today in a conversation, all we did was gist. And then you wonder, so if they're a gisting partner, then does that really mean they're a friend? And so there are many things you can look at there, because at the end of the day, when it comes to gist, if that's the only thing you're doing, then when you're at the topic of gist, what happens? You know what I mean? So is that really a friend? And I think, again, it comes to your values and your identity. Knowing who you are is so important, because then you begin to attract people who are like you. You know where you want to end up. You know the kind of people you want to be around. So my first point is definitely discovering who you are, knowing who you are. I know, a lot of people are definitely still on that journey, and I want to encourage you that it's not a bad thing to be on that journey in terms of self-discovery. But the fact that you're on that journey means you should be acknowledged that you are and be intentional about it. So, of course, for me, sorry to be churchy, I know, but asking God to give you that revelation, because He's put something amazing in all of us. We all have our identity. And so when you have that revelation, it's easier. And then the second thing, like Pastor Tunji was talking about, is, so the kind of people, the kind of person you are. When you know who you are, you know your style of making friends. There's nothing wrong with being an introvert. There's also nothing wrong with being an extrovert. And it doesn't necessarily mean that extroverts have the best friends, by the way. You might have introverts who have one or two friends, and those are deep relationships. So I know he referenced depth, and that's another thing where, there is friends in general, and then there's like deep relationships. So there's nothing wrong with having one or two friends. There's also nothing wrong with having a group of 7 friends. I'm so glad I used my backup internet because of NEPA. Sorry to digress. But yeah, so in terms of making friends, like I've said before, you generally attract the kind of person you are. If you're attracting the opposite, then there must be something questionable there. So making friends, there's things around empathy, approaching everything with love, because I find that, to be honest, any relationship can work if you use the lens of love, in the sense that you're kind, you always see things from, put yourself in the other person's shoes. So if somebody starts to act out, for example, are you not going to cut them off just because they're acting out? So are you going to say, by the way, maybe they're coming from a different place, they've had different experiences that makes them act out, and for that reason, I'm going to be compassionate. And so I will respond in love. I won't respond in the conventional way that most people will, like, oh, look at this weird person. Actually, no, I'll reach out to the person, because I'm using the lens of love to engage, to communicate with them, to be supportive of them. So I think that's a fundamental thing. And that even translates to business and networking and all, which I'll also talk about, because when you use the lens of love, it's not always about what you can get, and relationships are more than just what you can get. It's really, it's about giving, like Pastor Tunji said. Forget what you can get. Yes, you will be blessed with good friendships, good times, good experiences. In the end, if you need something, someone will provide a helping hand. But looking at it from, okay, what are you giving? And it comes from that place of love again, humility and all. So, so I guess that's the third point, which is, approaching these relationships with that lens of love, being a giver, and just not looking to see what you can get. Then he as he was talking, I was smiling, because there's also a thing about knowing, and I think that speaks to emotional intelligence, knowing, you have to have, they're different friends for different things, and that's the honest truth. It's not that you're using people, but they're friends where you know that, okay, these friends, we talk politics, I can, speak to them about certain things. There may be friends that are more spiritual, where when it comes to things of the kingdom, you guys reason on that level, you can go deep. So that emotional intelligence allows you to know how to also manage the friendship dynamics, just so that then you're not confused where you're with a friend from childhood, for example, and then you're referencing something that doesn't align with them. So, it's a little bit confusing, so it's always important to know who your friends are and what the friends are for, in the sense that, just the kind of like, okay, I have a friend, the friend is this kind of friend, that friend is that kind of friend, maybe this is a business friendship or business relationship, that sort of thing. And then I guess my final point is, when it comes to friendship, the fact that, we should always have that long-term approach. So never look at things like, okay, people, that's how life is, things just happen. I think we should kind of learn to invest in long-term relationships where, you just don't know where that will go. There's some friends that I've had for ages, and I wonder, wow, we've come a very long way. There are some friends who we were friends before, and then we kind of, maybe time and distance, living apart, we grew distant. But, when we met again, we became close and we hit it off. And, next thing, they are the ones that have helped me to do X or helped me to do Y. So I think, investing in long-term relationships is key. So just generally looking at things from a long-term approach. But then I think a final point I'll also give is the fact that, and this is just relationships in general, you never know where a relationship can take you. I've had friends whose names have been recommended just because, they were a great friend to someone, and in the end, that person was in a place where they could be very influential in that person's career and progression. And for the fact that they were friendly, or they gave them a helping hand, or they were just their friend, they referred them, and so that helped them with their career. I'll tell you, a lot of people, it's not just your CV and your application. A lot of people have gotten ahead in their careers down to relationships and friendships, and again, your friend doesn't always have to be your age mate. I have friends who are my mom's age, because I like them. I've invested in that relationship. I may see them as a mentor or as a mom, but I'm investing in that relationship. And so that speaks to investing as well, which means, are you checking up on the friend? Are you reaching out to them? Are you being there for them? I have always been the sort of person that has lived in so many different countries. So maybe sometimes birthdays, I'm not available. I'm not in the country there, or I'm not here for that. But I make the effort when I'm there, when I'm present. I reach out, I remember, and maybe I send them a Christmas message, or something out of the blue, like have your love language that you use. So again, I think it speaks to that thing about love, like using that lens of love to really approach all these things. So friendship is definitely important. A squad can be a group. It could also be two key friends that that, okay, look, these are my friends and I'm investing in this relationship. So the key thing is, it's not the size, it's the amount of investment you put. It's the lens of love that you use. It's also about knowing yourself, just so that, because especially for women, you find that women are interesting, where we have all these friends, but the next thing you've heard that, they fell out, and you're wondering, okay, why? And it's really about, it's a personality thing. It's nothing more than that. So in the end, maybe they didn't get on because of this, but in the first place, maybe they were not even meant to be besties. And that's why it's always good to know yourself. And when you know yourself, you attract people who are like you. You are clear on what you would do or not do. There's less of the peer pressure conversation and all of that. And people respect people who have values, and they maintain those values. They're consistent with them. Even friends do. Another thing with friendship is your friend should be able to be honest with you. Yes, so I think I'm that person where, initially my friends give me feedback, and even though I argue, I listen. So yes, I will argue, but I will take it on board. I will reflect on it, and I will act on it. So I think it's important where you have people who can tell you the truth, and then, you should also be able to do the same, being that authentic person who's there for them. And yeah, that brings me to the final point, which is, again, knowing what friends are, what category you would put a friend in terms of just, your life, because your life has different buckets. So I hope that makes some sense, and I'll be happy to also answer questions once they come in.
Okay, thank you so much, Aramide. Wow, I've learned a lot. I like what you said about relationships extending, going beyond age difference, and knowing the category of friendships that you have. And then I also like what you said about the fact that people who have advanced in their careers have done so just by being friends with someone. Let me share a quick story. So my current job at the moment, I was in Abuja at the time. and I went to make my hair. So I was in the salon, and then there was this lady sitting beside me, and then we started chatting. I don't even remember what we were chatting about, but by the time we finished chatting, we exchanged contacts. And then a couple of months down the line, she reached out to me because I had mentioned to her, what I was doing at the moment, at that time. This was in 2025 years ago. So I had mentioned to her what I was doing at that time. And in the midst of our gist, I also randomly mentioned that I was open to moving and I was looking elsewhere. So a couple of months down the line, she called me up and she was like, oh, there's this vacancy in my office. I don't know if you're interested and all of that. So I said, oh yeah, sure. I went for the interview. I didn't get it, but because we had been keeping in touch, after that one, there was another vacancy and she called me. And I went for the interview and I got the job. And that's where I still work at the moment, actually. Yeah, and we're still friends. Exactly. And we're still friends. So anytime I talk about, each time I get a promotion at work, I always make sure to make reference to me meeting this lady, because it was a very random meeting. I mean, in a salon where people just, you can just easily walk into a salon and make your hair and stand up and go home. But I met her in a salon, and from there I got a job, and I mean the rest they say is history. So it's true, like you don't necessarily have to. It's not your CV always that gets you that job that you're looking for. It could just be making friends with someone and that person refers you to someone else. And it's not only about the job. It could also be in business too. People get referrals from their friends. So I absolutely agree with you. Okay, so we'll move on to questions right now. I have a couple of questions here. There is one. I read one question. I think it's interesting, and I'd like to read. So either Aramide or Pastor TJ, please, any one of you could answer this. So what happens when you are in a platonic relationship with your squad, but one of them likes you more than friends, while you like another in the same squad enough to date? What do you do? I think so. Basically, this is just asking a question about, so maybe there are like 3 or 4 friends and one likes you, but you like someone else and you guys are in the same squad. So what do you do? Basically, how do you avoid getting into some kind of entanglement? I think that's what this question is about.
Oh my goodness, that word.
Yeah, so basically, how do you avoid getting into how do you avoid getting into this kind of mix-up where feelings seem to be flying all over the place and there is no clarity? What do you do?
Maybe Pastor Tunji wants to speak first.
Pastor TJ.
Okay, so all right, so I don't know how many of you are listening, but I'll be honest and use myself as an example. At different points in my life, I've had friendships with people of the opposite gender, where somewhere along the line, feelings begin to develop, right? And I think one of the things for me is to say to myself, what am I hoping to get out of this friendship, right? So at a time when I was single, but I was not ready to start dating. Yeah. So it was clear to me that even though, right, I was getting attracted, I really wasn't interested in starting to date just yet, right? And a couple of things that I used to do. Number one is I remember that there was one person we were so close that we could have an honest conversation about the emotions that was getting to happen between the two of us. I think we're in 300 level or so. I can't remember when it was, and we did have that conversation, and the interesting thing is I know that for some other people, those kind of things have destroyed relationships and friendship before. For this person, we became like stronger friends, right? And up until today, we're still friends. That's about almost 30 years later, right? And that was it. And again, so that's the first thing is I'll say, look, where am I in my life? What am I looking for? Am I looking for a romantic relationship or not? if I happen to be looking for a romantic relationship, right, I then say to myself, okay, so it's before these emotions get stronger, the checklist in quotes of what I'm looking for in a romantic relationship or a dating relationship, from what I can see already, does this person have it? Let me give you another personal example. I had one person who was very close to me that, again, if you ask me, to be honest, we could have dated and perhaps ended up getting married. The only thing that didn't make it happen that time was this. So as of that time, I had a sense, that somewhere along my life, I would be a pastor, just as far back as when I was in university again, right? And this, my friend, lovely lady, very smart. Today, this person is a CEO of an organization and all of that, And this person used to say to me, in my life, I do not pray. I do not have any aspiration to be married to a pastor or anybody who is going to be seriously involved in church work, right? And these are just random conversations we used to have. So for me, even when I started feeling like, oh gosh, this baby's pretty, I like the way she speaks, we're gelling, we gel so much, But that's one thing that I thought was very important in my life, right? Since it looked like we're not agreeing on it, I sort of then said, okay, I'm not going to go in the direction of a romantic relationship, with this person. So that for me is how, and of course, there are different ways that you manage relationships and connections with people of the same gender versus people of the opposite gender. So in some ways, all right, you want to sort of be able to have some sort of what you call them boundaries, all right, so that again, you can make things fairly less complicated, than they should. And of course, when you then begin, if it's a relationship that is open, and you beginning to think that this one now, I am happy to take this in a romantic direction. Of course, there are things that you do. You then change language, you change contact, you change value, you change the way you begin to speak to the person and the way that you begin to position yourself around the person. All right, that's also very important. Okay, so Gifty, I think that's it. I hope that someone caught something from there.
Hey, thank you very much, Pastor TJ. I think one thing I took away from there was basically learning how to set boundaries. That also helps. Yeah, boundaries help a lot. Next question is.
Sorry, Gifty. I just wanted to add. So sorry.
Please, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm definitely not a dating expert. I always say that, but I think having upfront conversations, is another thing that is important because, especially when it's a friendship group, so that then expectations are not kind of like mismatched, and also it just kind of like clears the air, so there's no uncomfortable instances. So I think. So a lot of people don't like confrontation, and then it doesn't have to be confrontational, but I believe in just having those upfront discussions. If somebody's feeling some kind of way, or you observe that they're feeling some kind of way, and meanwhile you like someone else in the group, I think it's important to just you can be kind. You can be kind about it, but it's important to have that conversation so that then it doesn't become a bit dodgy or weird along the way. So that's kind of just what I wanted to add. Nothing more than that.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Aramide. Another question. Generally, it is believed that the dynamics of making friends amongst guys and amongst ladies differ. As a lady, is it easier to settle for friendship with the opposite sex? Because being friends with the same gender comes with so much drama. Aramide, this is for you. What do you think?
So, yes, especially our culture is very interesting. Our culture is an interesting culture generally. So you find that other cultures may embrace that platonic relationship between males and females more than, for example, Nigerian culture. Especially, I don't know, maybe speak for Yorubas, they just assume, okay, is something happening? Why did you get? But you can actually literally just be friends. So I think also you know, having a friend, there's nothing wrong with having a friend who's male, if you're female, or vice versa. I think the issue now begins when you're in a relationship and then you have a very close friend. And the thing with relationships is not everyone is that welcoming of that kind of vibe, you know, between the partner and a friend. And it could be for different reasons. It may be just the way they were brought up, that's what they know, or maybe even certain insecurities. Remember that everybody's coming from a different place. So, you know, I think it's wisdom to be mindful of how you interact with a close friend, especially when you're in a relationship, which is why communication is always good. Having upfront conversations, finding out what the person kind of is, what they're okay with. When you it's just giving that person that accord and respect. And then, of course, you know, when you're not in a relationship and you have a close friend, because you're both male and female, if you spend a lot of time together, we are red-blooded human beings. There could be situations where then you now start thinking that, oh, maybe I like that person, maybe this person likes me. So I think it's also important to be mindful of that, so that one day you're not taken aback, you know what I mean? So be mindful of that, be cautious of that as well. I guess that's what I would say to that. I hope I answered the question.
Okay, thanks, Ramide. Next question. What's the way out of a long-term friendship where the other party keeps hurting the other person but keeps apologizing? This is open to, I don't know, Pastor TJ, do you want to take this, or Ramide, anyone?
Okay, so if you, did I hear the question say long-term relationship, I mean long-term friendship, where the one person
long-term friendship,
the other person?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, all right. So you think about quality and the depth of friendships and relationships, right? And the truth is that I've read something not too long ago about the fact that the quality of friendships that we have, right, has a significant impact on our well-being, our emotional well-being, on our mental well-being, and all of that, right? So if you have a connection with someone who almost on a regular basis, right, brings hurt to you, right, then you want to begin to ask yourself, what exactly is the value that this connection is bringing to my life? Because at some point, you really need to sort of be very, very concerned about yourself. So if a relation or if a friendship is generating more anxiety on a more frequent basis than peace and joy and kindness and laughter and merriment and all of those things, then there is room for you to then begin to consider, okay, so can I dilute the quality of this relationship and take it from my top 5 and make it my top 15 and limit interaction one way or the other, all right? Because again, at the end of the day, you need to protect yourself. If after you have had, you know, like Aramide said, you've had very great conversations, you've confronted the issues, and it still remains the same, I think that is perhaps one way to deal with it. And if you then think that there is a value that this person brings to you that perhaps you don't want to let go of just yet, do you want to also then sort of take another look at the other people around you and say which one of them, you know, can provide you, in quotes, you know, similar values, all right, with less stress in your life, all right, and you can sort of gravitate in that direction. And personally, I think I've seen and I've done things like that in my life once in a while over the years, you know, from time to time, and I'm still here, I haven't died, you know, and the people have not died as well. So everybody needs to be able to think about their happiness and their peace of mind, you know, when you're connected with people.
Okay, great. Next question. I easily make friends and share deep stuff with them, even if I am just meeting them. I am scared that one day my vulnerability to new friends might backfire. Is there a limit to what I can share in a budding friendship?
Okay, maybe I'll take a stab. So there's nothing wrong with being an open book, first of all, you know, and it goes back to knowing who you are. I mean, I've come a long way, so I used to be very secretive, by the way, but I think if you're an open book, you should also know, it's also knowing the kind of friend, right? So if it's a business relationship, is there really any need to overshare? Because you can be an open book, but then there's also a limit, right? So you don't want to be that person that is oversharing. It's also wisdom, it's literally just knowing, what your limits are, and ask the Holy Spirit to help you. You can actually ask the Holy Spirit to help you just so that you don't overstay. But I don't think there's anything wrong with being an open book, unless you have certain things that you would rather not let the world know. And the question is, okay, have you dealt with those things? But if you're an open book, it means that, I'm not saying that people will carry your gist, but if it ever came back to you, you wouldn't feel so, bad, because it's who you are. So I think it's just knowing from an emotionally intelligent standpoint where the boundary is when it comes to sharing. And like Pastor TJ said, you may have that concentric circle of 5 core friends and then the 15. So you also need to know where people fit into. So you also know where, and you can always check yourself, because we may get carried away when we're overshare. But also from time to time, start learning to also check yourself. So it doesn't mean being a different person, being a bit paranoid and all, but just ask for wisdom so that then not where not to say certain things, because it's nothing, like I said, there's nothing wrong with being a sharer. It's just that being an oversharer sometimes is not appropriate, if that helps.
Okay. I think for me, what I usually do is, the moment I open my mouth to share something, I always have it at the back of my mind that there is a possibility that this could end up somewhere else. So for me, already the decision to share with anyone means that I could end up getting or hearing this information somewhere else. And if I'm okay with that, then I share. If not, if I'm not okay with like hearing this thing anywhere else, then there's no point. And I'm better off just keeping it to myself. But if I ever open my mouth to share with anyone, I always keep it at the back of my mind that there's a possibility that this could end up somewhere else. And if I'm okay with that, then I mean, it's fine. That's just me, though. That's how I like that. Yeah. Next question.
Can I say something to that?
Yes, Pastor TJ, please, you can.
All right. So I think about this from multiple angles, right? The angle of the sharer and the angle of the person that is being told stuff, right? And I think that there is a scenario in which you can almost consider yourself, right? Treat yourself as your apartment. The friends that you have, or there are people in your life, your gate man, who perhaps may never get into your living room. The people who come into your life, all right, by virtue of the relationship you have with them, they stay in your living room. They never get into your kitchen. There are those that you can take into your bedroom. There are those that you can go take everywhere with you, right? So you want to sort of think about it that way. Because again, you want to think about the burden that you are placing on the person. Because sharing information might become so valuable to this person that I have become trustee of this part of their lives. And am I ready, all right, to be so committed person that I can consistently receive this kind of information about them and feel like I can burden that they are placing on me, the burden of trust and the burden of confidentiality. Because sometimes that's what makes people to sort of kind of run away, or to sort of just share your gist with other people, because they feel like, oh, this person is placing too much on demand on me too early in this relationship, and I don't think I want to commit this week. So it's just useful to think about all of these things around this area, right?
Absolutely. Thank you, Pastor TJ. Next question. This particular question is in 2 parts, actually. So the first thing is, the friends that are unsaved, that is, friends that are not Christians. And how do you maintain and manage friendships with unsaved friends? How do you deal with it? Is it okay to have friends that are not Christians? So for example, is it okay for me to have a very close friend that is a Muslim? And how do I manage that friendship or relationship?
Does Pastor Tim, do you want to go first?
So I mean, so that people don't think about my pastoral bias, maybe we should sort of just start with
okay, great. I had a feeling you say that in the end. but you know, and I've thought long and hard about this, especially as, you know, I'm getting I'm doing more, I don't want to call it, I guess I'll call it ministry. You know, I'm doing more ministry things. But the truth is, first and foremost, we're all God's children, right? So everybody on this earth, God brought into the world, you know, before we start thinking about, okay, Christian or Christian. So that's a fundamental thing. There's also a place for religion versus spirituality. Now, you know, yes, we are Christian, but we have a mandate as Christians to live in love. So that also means that you will come across people who are not Christian. And by the way, if you are living like the way Christ intended for you to live, some people will be drawn to you just because of that way of living and your character, your kindness, and they may not be Christian. So are you going to turn them away? Because you could be the signpost. You know, you could be the way that they would come to know Christ. People are always watching. In fact, I was in a Bible study yesterday, and you know, we spoke about how sometimes unbelievers, they know that they believe, they recognize believers. They may not regard you, and then maybe one day when there's trouble, they'll go and call you, like that, what happened when it came to Daniel. You know, they did not remember him, and then the writing was on the wall, and then they had to go and look for him. So I have friends that are not Christian, and I don't treat them any less than my Christian friends. In fact, I have friends who, when we were in high school, they were Muslim. And I always believed in my heart that, this person is a staunch Muslim. They would never, I can never minister to them. And in the end, they turned around. So I was like, wow, I limited God there. So I'm not saying convert anyone. That may not be your call. But I think just living in love and treating everyone like Christ would. Christ sat down with people who were not Christian. He was friends with tax collectors who were believed to be like the other extreme of maybe like Jews or whatever, the children of God. So it's really important to live in love. And when you think about now I have this friend, the person is not Christian. How can I get them to know God more? I want to convert them. I don't think the onus is on you to convert them. I think, yes, you can share as you are led, but you don't have to be forceful about anything. And if you believe in your heart that by God's grace, that we minister to, if you do believe, it will happen. So I wouldn't say, oh yeah, be only friends with Christians. By the way, Christianity, again, that's religion, right? Because there are people who call themselves Christians, but deep in their heart, they're not even living like a Christian would. So that labeling, it becomes a thing. So I try to move away from labeling and say, okay, so how are you living? What does your life reflect? Does it really reflect what Christ has intended for us to? And if it does, of course, embrace other people who are even not necessarily, worshiping God the way you would. Now, when it comes to being influenced, again, it comes down to your identity and knowing who you are. So if you're clear on who you are, you study the word, you spend time in the word, then you will not be influenced by someone that is not Christian, even though you hang out or talk to them. And even that brings me to say that you may not necessarily always do everything with somebody who doesn't necessarily have the same spiritual values as you. You know where the line is drawn. So it comes back to identity, but also living in love. Again, identity and love. It's really those two things. Those are the two sort of like levers that I have been using with everything. And so that's my advice. Definitely, there are people who, they may end up being Christians. So don't, there may be an opportunity there and then you've turned them away because they weren't Christian. I don't agree with that. I hope that answers the question.
Okay. Pastor TJ, would you like to add something? For me, a follow-up question to what Aramide has said. Follow-up question will be, how deep can your relationship with someone who is unsaved be? What will be the depth of that kind of friendship or relationship? How deep should it be? Pastor TJ.
That's okay. Can you hear me? All right. So for me, I completely. I mean, so I agree with what Aramide said. And when you speak about the depth of relationships that you have with people who don't share your spiritual values, right? So you need to think about it from a contextual point of view, right? The depth of relationships, you know, in certain directions that the scripture very actively, right, and discourages us, you know, from having with people who don't share our spiritual faith, right? So number one, we don't share our spiritual values, right? So number one is a romantic relationship, right? The Bible very clearly says we shouldn't be unequally yoked with unbelievers, right? And there's also the context where in certain, some measure of business dealings, right, at certain level, the deeper you go and the closer you become, sometimes you want to sort of consider the alignment in values, okay? So because, for example, you jump into a business relationship with someone who is not saved, and this person has no scruples, all right, about giving bribes, about cutting corners and doing stuff. And those are things that you do not want to do, right? But because you're joined together in business, it becomes an issue with you. And I think there's something that the Bible said about, I think this should be in the book of Jude. Forgive me, I don't remember the exact verse, right? Either the book of Jude or 2 Peter. I was talking about Lot, the nephew of Abraham, right? And he said Lot was a righteous man, but who lived in an unrighteous environment, and that because of the things that were happening around him, his soul was continuously vexed. All right, so based on his level of interaction and exposure, you know, to the unrighteousness around him, right? So just like Aramide said, I agree that we can be friends with people who are not saved. If you run a company, all right, you can hire people. You don't have to hire people who are Christians only. You can hire people who are unbelievers as long as they have the skills and the values that your organization is promoting. If you have an organization, you know, that wants to be your client, or that they want to give you work to do, that is run by people who are not believers, as long as, again, there is professionalism, values aligned, they're going to pay you your money, they're not going to ask you to do stuff that are unethical, please, by all means, go for it, all right? So one thing I'm saying is this: as we grow in emotional intelligence and personal maturity, you would learn how to be able to navigate, all right, and disentangle yourself and also connect yourself at the appropriate levels, all right, with people around you. So if you think about Abraham, our father of faith, right, he was relating with kings who did not share his faith, and he was thriving in their midst, right? If you were to be the CEO of a big company, right, again, you will have to interact with people. You'll have to attend meetings, belong to associations, right, where not everybody is a Christian. So my advice is you need to grow your own, you need to grow your own value tolerance, right, all right, and be able to say, I can connect with these people without being influenced and diluted in a way or the other, right? Rather, I will be the one that is the influencer, okay? So in my days in the days before I became a full-time pastoral staff of the Elevation Church, right? There were places that I was friends with very many people, but there were times where people wanted to do stuff, or there were conversations that they were having. I stepped into the room and the conversation would sort of just go quiet, right? Because they knew that it was not something I wanted to. But if it was work related, we had to do great stuff, I was all sold out to get it done, right? So those are things that, I mean, I've had colleagues before who I was working with very closely, but I knew that this person is prone to having multiple romantic relationships at the same time. This one is behaving like that at all. It didn't influence me, didn't become like them. We had a great work relationship, but again, I tried my best to sort of influence their values, you know. But again, we were able to draw the lines in some way or the other. So
okay, thank you, Pastor J. Next question. With the advent and prominence of social media, the facade of having many followers and people liking your posts has taken over. how can you ensure that you're not living in an illusion with having real friends and just having invisible social media friends? Aramide, I think you should go first. You seem like a social media person.
I'm listening as an influencer in the social media.
Exactly,
This is your
yes.
question.
This question is for you, Aramide.
Interesting question. Excuse me, sorry.
Sorry.
Okay, so thank you. Having a lot of followers, you know, and I'm glad we're asking this question about social media, as social media becomes such a strong, it's almost like it's an extension of people's lives now. But a lot of the time, and especially young people, what you see isn't always what really is. That's the first thing. A lot of people who have loads of followers are not necessarily even always happy, right? And they may not even necessarily have a lot of friends. They may seem to have a lot of people following them, but having maybe real deep relationships, like as Tunji was talking about in terms of depth, is absent. So again, it boils down to identity, knowing who you are. If you're clear on who you are, you know, confident in who you are, you wouldn't be driven by followers. So a lot of followers versus very few followers. That's not what defines you. Having a lot of followers, yes, it opens certain doors, maybe in terms of what opportunities. You may even be invited to speak at certain places in terms of, okay, how you build your following, but it's by no means any kind of definition as to who you are. And I know it's easy to say it when you have lots of followers, but you know, having 5 followers, 10 followers versus 500 followers or 5,000, 15,000 followers, for me, where at least now that I'm now looking at it, looking back, I realize it's almost the same thing. But then if you place a lot of value on that, that's when then your temperament goes up and down. When, you know, you get few likes on a post versus a lot of likes on a post. That should not be what makes you feel like you are more than something. So just because you have 5,000 or okay, 2,000 likes on a certain post, you know, it doesn't make you a better person. It doesn't make you it doesn't make you a better person than when you have only 2 likes. So I think it's resettling that thing in your mind about, okay, look, first of all, social media doesn't define me. I have to know what defines me. As for me, I'm a child of God. I know that it's the word of God that defines me. That's so I know that even by God's grace, I'll be on the way, I'll be way past the number of followers that I am, but it's not going to change who I am. So that means that at the moment, if I have very few likes or very many likes, it doesn't change who I am. It doesn't make me feel better. And I had to come full circle to that point. Because there were times where, I'll just look at, maybe I'm running, so I was with regards to my business. You know, I'll look at competitors' pages, I'll look at all the engagement, I'll be like, but this person is getting a lot of likes, what's going on? And then I had to realize that I needed to focus. So after spending a lot of time being distracted, maybe looking at the competitor's page and saying, but they're getting lots of likes, why now, and beating myself down, I realized that then I'm not focusing. And so, okay, what am I called to do? What am I doing? How can I do it well? Let me put my head down and do it. And the more you begin to do that, just do what you're called to do, know who you are, you know, and build that confidence. And I have to speak about confidence because it's a thing, especially for a lot of young people. Really, the only way you can find confidence is not in other things. It's not in external things. It's really in who you are. It's already in you. You are already that confident person. It may be that is yet to manifest. And of course, there are ways. I don't want to be all preachy here, but there are ways for that to manifest. So it's not in what people say. It's not in the comments. It's not in all the oohs and ahs that are coming from the exterior. It's really not. It's none of those things. So it's important to not get carried away, you know, by social media analytics. And if I want to speak about social media, by the way, nowadays, organizations are looking less at likes because for so many reasons, the downside in terms of like mental health and all of that. So likes are becoming less important, right? But even in terms of just the impact of likes, a lot of likes doesn't translate to a lot of things. Because for example, some people use artificial intelligence to generate more likes, or they buy followers, there's that. But also just because someone has a lot of likes doesn't mean they make any sales. There was an influencer, I think a year ago or 2 years ago, she had, you know, hundreds of thousands or close to 1 million followers, and she couldn't sell a t-shirt. I think everybody saw that post. Caucasian girl was very upset that, you know, after all that, She had t-shirts on, and nobody, she had likes too, but nobody purchased it. So companies are recognizing that like doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't equate to a conversion. So again, going back to this likes thing, I wouldn't focus too much on it. It's always, a lot of people look at it like, oh, that post, and yes, there are ways to generate likes. Virality has different elements. There are things people like to talk about. And there are people that make up stuff just to get likes. I don't believe in that. So they will make up all these interesting experiences that didn't even really exist. But again, it goes down to knowing who you are. So you find that a lot of people are actually depressed, and social media even actually causes that, because you're spending a lot of time looking and feeding your mind through your eyes with information that sometimes is even false. So of course, it's going to dampen your spirit. You wake up in the morning, that's the first thing you scroll through. You see something that you don't even realize what it has done to your mind. It's triggered something. So I'm as much as I'm active on social media, I'm very guarded about my time. I don't spend a lot of time there just scrolling through stuff. I've started unfollowing things that are not healthy. I'm very clear, and I don't mind being unpopular for a while. I just want to make sure that my mind is right and I'm not feeding my mind with things I shouldn't, because it's the new media, it's the new TV, it's the new magazine. Social media is the new everything in one. So if I'm not conscious and intentional about what is coming into my mind through my ears, what I watch, I don't want to watch all these negative videos, because in the end, I become an angry person. So again, I think it's important to just be very careful. Don't let's get carried away that, it's just social media. It's not just social media. It's very significant, especially for young people, because we're impressionable. See me claiming young, yes, I'm young. We are impressionable, so what we feed our minds with is very important, so let's be careful and not be carried away. It's about really knowing who you are. Okay, sorry, I waffled on a bit.
Thank you, Ramide. So I guess we're almost done. We have one last question, and it's actually specifically for you, Ramide.
Okay.
So this is going back to the very first question that you answered. This person says, how does one have that conversation with someone who is falling for you, but whom you're not attracted to? Give us example of how to go about it.
Wow.
Okay.
So did the person initiate the conversation or you initiated it? So if someone is falling for you, I guess for me, first of all, I don't want to be, I'm old-fashioned in my thinking, so I don't want to be the one chasing a guy. So I imagine that if the person is falling for me, they're the one chasing me. But if they've never had a conversation with me and they've been chasing me, first of all, that's already it's suspect, because how can you like me all this while and never really say? But I guess some people are shy, right? So you can encourage them and help them by having conversation. So your question is, okay, how do you have the conversation? I guess you can, and it's really important to be sensitive to different people, because some people maybe, they've been beating themselves up as to how they will chat with you about it. So don't take it too casually. But sorry, I can be very direct. I don't know. I was going to say just ask them, do you like me? But I think you can, ask them, okay, do you have time to chat? And then you can let them know that, okay, you've been observing that they've been maybe spending extra time doing this for you or being like this, that you just wanted to make sure that you were not, imagining things, and that is the person interested in you other than just being friends? So you're giving them the opportunity. If they deny and say no, they don't like you, then it's okay. But if they're honest, right, and say, okay, yes, I do like you, you can say, okay, well, okay, that's good to know that you just wanted to make sure, and that, you can thank them for being honest with you, but also you can also be honest. You can, it's not saying thank you for liking me, but thank you for being honest. And then also you can be honest and say, okay, the truth is, yeah, I've observed it for a while, but honestly, I'd like us to be friends, and not anything more than that, because it's really important to be kind at the end of the day. just because you're not in a relationship does not mean you may not end up helping the person in the future, or vice versa. So I don't believe in just burning bridges, unless, in fact, burning bridges is not the right word, but I think Pastor Tunji answered that question before. Sometimes toxic relationships, there's a place for stopping that. But it's really important to be kind, even in the way you speak to people, So yeah, I think it's still important to have an upfront conversation. And I like that the person asked, but you can first of all just confirm that, that they like you. And if they say they do, you also can be honest, without complicating matters.
Okay, thank you. We have one last minute question for Pastor TJ. This person says, I'm an introvert. I genuinely don't know how to start friendships, but I do realize the need for a circle of friends. How do I become that person? I actually believe I need help in this department. Pastor TJ, this is for you, especially because you spoke about being an introvert at the beginning, so.
All right, so I'll tell you a couple of things. So the person was asking this question. One thing that introverts tend to do is have very few friends, but very deep relationships and connections with those few people, right? And the interesting thing is that there is scientific and sociological research that suggests that the more not so deep relationships you have, but you have them in a good quantity, all right, that the more help you're likely to get, in certain ways, whether in your career, different things, right? There's a whole bunch of sociological research around that. Now, back to your specific question around what to do, okay? So the first thing that an introvert struggles with is the fear of rejection and not being accepted, right? The fear of messing up, okay, and not being adequate to be able to connect with people, right? So the first thing you want to try and do is to be able to say to yourself, okay, so are there people in your immediate environment right now, okay, who you would like to connect with? If you wanted to connect with them, okay, why do you want to connect with them? What sort of value do you see in your friendship with them, okay? Once you sort of process that in your head, it makes it a little easier for you to be able to sort of speak to them on the same wavelength of that value, all right? So let me tell you a couple of things that maybe one or two things that someone has done to me before. I remember that when I was doing my NYSC, all right, we were attending one NYSC meeting one day, and one young lady came up to me. So I just bought this, it was in Yaba, right? Yaba, I served in Lagos. So I just bought a bottle of Coke and this toast bread, right? And this lady that I'd never spoken to before in my life, I'd never seen her, this person is an extrovert, just came and said, please, may I have some of your toast? And I was like, in my head, is this girl smoking something? Why are you asking for my toast? I'm like, why? There were like 1,000 whys in my head, but I very reservedly said, okay, no problem. So take some. So we shared it. As we became friends. Until today, we're very great friends, right? She had no intention. It was not a romantic gesture, right? But what it is this person had been seeing me around, and saying, oh, this guy looks like a sensible, smart person. I used to teach Bible study classes in NCCF fellowship then, right? And so she that was sort of that was her own, in quotes, way of starting a friendship. I've also sort of used things like, you see someone holding something, yeah, and I say, may I take a look at that book, or may I take a look at whatever that thing is, right? So the first thing is to try and establish a mutual interest. The stronger the measure of mutual interest between you and the person, all right, the more you have common grounds for relationship, right, and friendship. So friendship really is mostly about mutual, the intersections of your mutual interests, and so the more you can explore those mutual interests, whether if you like reading, if you like music, if you like watching movies or whatever it is, those are platforms on which you can connect with people and say to them, oh, may I borrow a book from you, or can we watch this movie together? And then from there, the more you hang out together and spend time together doing stuff together, you realize you have more things that you have that are your mutual interests, and you can explore that over and over and over again. And it doesn't have to be one person. It can be
other people, people at work, people in the office. And one thing that I used to try and do, all right, also is while all of us were so before we started working from home, right, or before everybody started working from home, I used to try as much as possible not to have lunch by myself. Okay, I used to try and not have lunch by myself. So either I will drag someone along to lunch, I will sit along with people when they're having lunch or something like that, you know, again, just to catch their conversations and be able to sort of interact with them. Another thing is when you go for meetings, can you observe the people that you're in a meeting with, right? Don't be the invisible person in the meeting. Say something, make a contribution so that people can see the value in you, and it gives them an opportunity to want to connect with you on the basis of that value. All right. So these are some of the things that you should do. Participate. So increase your level of participation. So perhaps you're part of the singles ministry at the Elevation Church or wherever you may be. Okay. Can you put up your hands once in a while and make contributions? So all of us, you know, from time to time get dragged into all these WhatsApp group of people that you went to secondary school with, people that you went to primary school with, people that you bought your first Ashwebi with, people that you did something, whatever it is, you know. If you're looking for friends, right, if you observe for a while the way people are interacting and all of that, of course, you to participate, because participation then puts you out there. It also helps you to be able to see people that you can connect with. So those are like the 3 or 4 things that I would do. So number 1, I've said, find people of mutual interest, identify people around you who have mutual interest. I've said when you go for meetings, try and participate. When you're in your organization, in the space of work, don't just be the only person who is doing things on their own. And of course, when you're in other group environments, all right, participate, do something, say something. The more you do that, the more you realize that you have it in you and you can connect with people on the basis of mutual interest.
All right, thank you so much, Pastor TJ. It's been a lovely evening. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure that other people who joined us on this call have learned a lot as well. Thanks a lot, Aramide. It was nice having you on the call. The session is coming to an end now. If you're just joining us and you have missed, but not to worry, I understand that the recording will be available on YouTube and on our Tech Singles page on IG. Just to quickly recap, basically today we talked about how to build your inner circle, talking about squad goals. So how do you build your inner squad, basically, and people asked a lot of questions. But my personal take home from today's session was basically understanding that there are categories of friendships, and also understanding that it's okay for you to have friends that are not saved. However, the onus lies on you to know where to place these friends, and also make sure that at every point in time, you're the one influencing them and they're not influencing you. And the very popular question, basically how to avoid entanglement, Aramide said that you should have a conversation and be upfront about it. I think that it was a lovely session, guys, and it was great to have everyone on the call. Just a couple of announcements before we end the call. We have the Hangout coming up on the 25th and 26th of September. It's the major events that we usually have at the Singles Ministry of the Elevation Church. So it's basically a time for single people to come together and hang out and share on different life experiences. And we'll be having a couple of guest speakers for the Hangout. It's going to be online, actually. So just follow us on Instagram to get more information on this event. It's the 25th and 26th of September. And also, if you have more questions on today's session, you can just send us a DM on Instagram and we'll get in touch with you. That's it for today, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. Once again, thank you to our speakers, Pastor TJ and Aramide. Have a lovely evening and have a blessed week ahead. Bye, guys.
Thank you, Gifty. Well done. Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye, guys. Bye-bye. Enjoy the rest of the weekend.